This is not a fairy tale or a fantasy with a wonderful ending. This is an honest, rough story about how life can be destroyed to the ground and how, step by step, you can start to put it back together. Not without pain, not without someone else's help, but for real. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are reading us from. Martin Cardenas never believed in fate. His truth was calculations, contracts, and exact numbers. He knew that any crisis can be managed if you make the right plan, but the car accident did not ask for a plan. It just happened, and left behind a body that no longer obeyed it. More than 2 years have passed since then. Martin lived in a mansion on the outskirts of the city, buried in greenery. The house was equipped with everything necessary: ramps, automatic doors, nurses, even a swimming pool with a lift. Everything to survive, but not to live. He almost never left the bedroom and office. Once a week, a slow circle around the garden, more out of stubbornness than desire. The staff worked flawlessly, but they didn't look him in the eye. No one called him by name. Just, "Mr. Cardenas, how are you feeling? Can I get you something?" A quick glance, a quick dismissal, as if his chair were contagious. The day when everything changed began like any other. It was midday. The garden was stuffy and smelled of jasmine. Martin asked to be taken to the pool. He never went in the water, but he liked to sit next to it. The surface of the water reminded him of something he had lost, of movement, of himself before the accident. He told his assistant to step away. He wanted to be alone. His fingers trembled on the control panel. He moved closer to the edge. And when he wanted to turn just a little, the chair slipped. A jolt, a jerk, a pain in his shoulder. The cold of the water, at first refreshing, then pressing from all sides. He didn't scream. He didn't have time. Only panic. Only the roar of his heart in his ears. He couldn't swim. He couldn't hold on. He was simply going under. And his first thought was, that's it. Someone's strong hands are pulling him up. Everything around is thundering. The gurgling of water in his ears, a sharp cough, the blinding sun, and a voice, real, alive. "Breathe. Can you hear me? Breathe." He opened his eyes. A woman was standing in front of him. Wet hair stuck to her cheeks, a simple work shirt, hands dirty with earth, clumps of grass in her hair. She was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "Where is everyone?" she shouted towards the house. Where the hell was the staff? For the first time in a long time, Martin wanted to answer something informal, almost alive. But he couldn't. He just looked at her, and she, at him, not as an invalid, not as a shadow. She looked at him as a person who could and should be saved. Later he learned that her name was Clara, the new girl. She was working in the garden along the south wall. She saw his chair go into the water, and without thinking, she threw herself in, although she couldn't really swim. "And if you weren't here?" he asked later. "And if I was here?" she answered, simply shrugged and left. That night Martin couldn't sleep. Neither her face nor the moment of the fall were spinning in his head, but something else, something new. When she pulled him out of the water, for a moment he stopped feeling broken. The next morning he called the manager. "Fire the 2 assistants," he said calmly, "and find Clara. Let her stay." "In what capacity?" "As someone who can teach me to trust again." The morning was clear. Martin was sitting by the window when Clara came in. "They called me?" "Was it about yesterday?" "Yes, I wanted to thank you and offer you a job." "But I already work for you." "No, I want you to work for me, not for the garden." She looked at him for a long time. Then she said quietly, "You know, I wasn't scared yesterday because you could drown, but because for the first time I saw a person disappear in complete silence." He nodded. "Then stay, so that this silence never comes back." She paused. Then she extended her hand, open, without formalities, without a contract. "Good. But I'm not a nurse or an orderly. I'm just a person." "That's what I need," Martin said. He shook her hand. And for the first time in many months, he felt a living pulse running through his veins. At first, they hardly spoke. Martin thought, this is good. He was used to silence. But Clara's silence was different. It did not pull into the abyss. It was the silence of presence, warm, respectful of boundaries. She did not fill the pauses with words. She was simply there. Clara settled into a small room on the first floor. Formally, for convenience. Informally, because she understood that Martin needed someone not on a schedule, but for real. Sometimes she helped him move around the house, but she was never in a hurry, never touched him without permission. Once over a cup of tea in the garden, she asked, "Why do you never look in the mirror?" He smiled bitterly. "Because I do not see myself. I see the consequences. And if I say that I see a person." He looked at her, without protection, without the usual cold mask, simply, "Believe." Simon, with that rare expression that can be called real vulnerability. "I didn't know you could survive and still feel half dead," he said quietly. Clara didn't answer right away. She just looked at him for a long time, as if checking if he was ready to hear her. "I wasn't in an accident," she finally said, "but I know what it's like to be broken and invisible." He turned to her. She nodded. "I was taken into foster care when I was 6. Before that, 5 years in different institutions. I didn't believe back then that you could belong to someone. I just lived. I tried not to get in their way." She paused, then added, "And now I choose who I belong to. Not because I have to, but because I see in a person a place where I don't have to disappear." Martin fell silent. For the first time in a long time, he realized he hadn't opened up to anyone. His life after the accident had turned into a set of procedures, a scheme, a fight for the bare minimum, and into silence. And Clara, with her directness, with her simple words, in which there was not a drop of pity, destroyed this order. And to his surprise, he did not want to defend himself. One evening, Clara came into the office. There were old photographs on the table. "Is this you, before the accident?" He nodded. He looked at the picture. A young man in a suit, straight posture, confident shoulders. "I don't even remember what it's like to walk," he muttered. "It's like someone else's life. And I don't remember what it's like to be called by name, not by number." "Everyone has their own amnesia," she said. He looked at her. "But have you learned to live?" She shook her head. "Number, I just decided one day not to die." At first he looked at her as a woman who had said something powerful, and then as a person who understands. Without questions, without pity, simply, he understands. A week passed. They began to talk more often about simple things, about food, weather, books, about complex things, almost by
I never
accident.
let anyone in longer
And
than
one day he
necessary.
confessed, "It's easier that way." "Not used to it." Clara looked at him calmly. "And if the person doesn't leave on his own?" He smiled barely noticeably and answered almost in a whisper, "Then perhaps it's worth staying." "I then don't know what to do with it," he whispered. One evening, Clara asked, "Have you ever felt like you've become a stranger in your own life?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm afraid my world has become a museum. Everything has frozen, and I'm just an exhibit behind glass." Clara smiled slightly. "Then let me open the window. Let the wind at least blow through these halls." The next morning, for the first time in a long time, Martin left the house not on schedule, not for the sake of a procedure, simply because Clara said, "Let me show you how the pomegranate tree blooms in the far corner of the garden." When they got there, he looked for a long time at the branches covered with scarlet flowers. "Has it borne fruit?" he asked. "No," Clara answered, "but it blooms every year, just like that, without a guarantee that something will grow." He looked at her, and suddenly he thought, maybe I can try to blossom too, even if I'm not sure it will work. That same night, for the first time in months, he took the cover off the mirror, and he didn't turn away. The phone rang. 1 ring, 2, 3. He didn't want to answer, but he picked it up anyway. "Hello?" A pause. Only the breathing on the other end of the line. Warm, nervous, feminine. "Martin. I'm sorry, it's Lucia." He closed his eyes. The name was like an old photograph. faded but painfully alive. He hadn't heard it for almost 8 years. "Lucia, are are you okay?" She was silent. Then very quietly, "No, that's why I'm calling." He froze. "I have cancer. Late stage. The treatment started too late. The doctors don't give guarantees." Silence, just a pulse in his temples. "Martin, we have a daughter." He froze. "What?" "Her name is Camilla. She's 7. You didn't know." I I didn't tell you. At first because I wanted to keep your life the way it was. And then it was too late. Too late to go back. I was afraid that you wouldn't cope, that in your condition you wouldn't be able to be a father." He didn't immediately realize that he was already speaking out loud. "You stole 7 years from me." "I know," she whispered. "I know." He felt something inside him breaking. He couldn't get up, but for the first time in a long time, he wanted to just leave, scream, slam the door, disappear. "Why are you saying this now?" "Because I'm dying, and because if something happens to me, Camilla will be taken into the system, and you are the only person I can trust with her." "Lucia, I'm in a wheelchair. I can barely cope on my own. How will I be able to take care of a child? I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you not to let her disappear. Like I once disappeared." And the call ended. He sat for a long time, clutching the phone in his hand. His face turned white. Clara found him in the office. "What happened?" He couldn't speak. He just silently handed her a note. In even mechanical handwriting, "I have a daughter." Clara didn't gasp. She wasn't scared. She just sat down next to her. "Where is she?" "With Lucia, but she's getting worse. If I, if I refuse, Camilla will be taken to an orphanage." Clara was silent. "I don't know how to be a father, Clara. I don't even know what she's like, what she loves, what she's afraid of, what she dreams about. And I'm afraid. Are you afraid that she'll be ashamed of you?" He nodded. Clara slowly took his hand. It wasn't a gesture of pity. It was an anchor. "Give her a chance to choose, and the rest you'll learn together." "You can be afraid," said Clara, "but you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there." 3 days later, a car stopped at the gate. A woman got out of it, very thin, with a scarf on her head and eyes that no longer showed pain, only a tired farewell. Next to her was a girl, thin, in a jacket 2 sizes too big. Camilla. Martin looked at them from the window, unable to stand up, unable to breathe evenly. Clara came out to meet them. She didn't hug Lucia. She just touched her shoulder, quietly, with respect. Words were not needed. When Camilla entered the house, her gaze immediately fell on the wheelchair. She stopped. Martin froze. He waited, for fear, embarrassment, maybe disgust. But the girl took a step, then another. She came closer and asked, "Are you my dad?" He nodded. His throat tightened so much that he couldn't utter a sound. Camilla held out her hand, small, warm, determined. He couldn't take it. His fingers were shaking as if in a fever. "Can I just sit next to you?" she asked, and she sat down, right on the floor, calmly. And so a new chapter began. Not in history, in life. Camilla didn't cry. She didn't rush to hug him, but every day she came to his office and just sat there. "What do you like? How did you become like this?" "Can you cook?" He answered. Not right away, uncertainly, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes laughing. But in this strange, informal dialogue, he began to remember what it was like to be needed, not an object of care, but a person who is chosen. Clara was there, always. In the morning, she baked waffles with cherry jam. Camilla once said that this is exactly how it was at her mother's. In the evening, they read fairy tales. During the day, Clara helped Martin understand how to ask questions without commanding, how to listen without analyzing. One day, Camilla came up to him with a piece of paper in her hands. "This is our house. Here is Mom. Here is you. And here is Clara." He looked. The drawing showed 3 small houses connected by a rainbow arc. "These are all mine," Camilla said. "I can't choose one. Because love has no square footage limits. He looked at the paper, and for the first time in a long time, he did not try to hold on. He only whispered, "Thank you for coming." A week later, a letter came from Lucia. The handwriting was uneven. The ink had spread a little, as if her hands were shaking. "I feel that soon, and I want Camilla back. As long as I can." And again fear. Again panic. He could lose her, the girl who called him daddy for the first time. Lucia's letter lay on the table. He read it 3 times, like a spell from which he could neither hide nor free himself. There were few words, but each one was like a splinter. "I feel like I'm leaving, and while I can, I want to be with my daughter. If not now, then when?" He didn't know what was scarier, losing Camilla or being alone again. Back when he had just begun to believe that he could be someone's, he didn't know if he had the right to argue with the mother who raised the girl, without demanding, without accusing. And he didn't know at all how to tell Camilla this, since she appeared in his house every day began the same way. Quick steps along the corridor, a light creak of the door. "Daddy, I'm here. Just Daddy, not Martin, not Mr. Cardenas, just Dad." And in those morning moments, everything he once called life began to sound different. Now he was sitting in the garden, watching Camilla collecting dry leaves in a bucket, playing gardener, as she called it. Clara was sitting next to him with a cup of herbal tea and a smile. Light, almost invisible, but very warm. "I have to tell her," Martin whispered without looking away, "that Mom wants to take her, that maybe she'll leave." Clara nodded. "Just don't say it like a loss. Say it like a choice. Let her decide with her heart. She's 7, Clara. Have you forgotten what she said? Love has no square footage limits?" In the evening, the 3 of them sat down at a simple wooden table on the veranda. Camilla ate pancakes, happily smearing honey on her cheeks. He looked at her as if she were a miracle that could disappear. "Kamilachka," he began slowly, "Mom misses you very much, and she wants you to be near." Camilla nodded. "I know. She's asking you to come back to her. Can I?" "Of course. She's your mom." "And you're my dad," she said simply. "Yes. And Clara is ours." He was confused. "Do you want to go to Mom?" "Yes, sometimes, but I want to be here too." She pointed to the drawing on the wall, 3 houses connected by a rainbow. "The house with Dad, the house with Mom, the house with Clara. They're all mine. I can't choose. Because love has no square footage limits." He couldn't answer. There was a lump in his throat. Clara spoke instead. "We don't choose love. We just find a warm place and stay." That night, Camilla fell asleep in the chair next to him. He didn't move her into the room. He just sat there listening to her breathing and felt that he now had a heart in which someone was sleeping. The next morning, he called Lucia. "She wants to be with you and me, and I can't help but let that happen. I don't want to take her away, Martin. I just want to be with her while I can. Then, together. Can you really handle it?" He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window. Camilla was drawing on the tiles with colored chalk. Clara was holding an umbrella so that the drizzle wouldn't get in the way. He exhaled. "I don't know how to be a perfect father, but I know how to be there." "Then, maybe you're better than I thought," Lucia said. And for the first time, there was no fear in her voice. "Thank you, not for permission, but for trusting her and for loving her, unconditionally, without chains." Lucia sighed, quietly. But there was no pain in that exhalation, only the weariness of a life lived, honest, almost bright. "I just want her to not feel like the end of loss when I'm gone, so that she knows she can be loved with more than just a house, more than just a life." "She knows," he replied, "because you've already done it, because we're doing it together, because she doesn't just have a family now." He was holding Camilla's drawing. Later that day, Clara found Martin in the studio, 1 girl in the center, and a note in childish handwriting. "Happiness is there and back. Always back." He showed her the drawing. "Do you think she'll understand if Lucia—" Clara didn't let him finish. She put her hand on his shoulder. "She already understands. Her heart is older than it seems." Martin exhaled. "I'm still afraid, but now, not for myself. Because now you're part of someone's always, said Clara, which means you're not alone. Autumn entered the house unnoticed. Chestnuts on the veranda, jam in jars, the smell of cinnamon and books lying in stacks near the chairs. Camilla continued to build her caterpillar shelters, checking every day to see if anyone was frozen. Martin no longer corrected her fantasies, because he knew she was protecting not only them, she was protecting hope, the very one he had once lost, and now he was protecting along with her. A week after the call, a photographer showed up at the house. Camilla needed a photo for the school album, and she insisted, just an honest family photo shoot, no fictitious people, as is. Who's left? They sat in front of the wall where an old painting had once hung. Now it was empty, and this empty space seemed to have been left on purpose, for the truth. Martin in a chair, Camilla on his lap, Clara on one side, Lucy on the other, in a light scarf, with tired but warm eyes. Before the shutter clicked, Camilla quietly said, "Ready? This is our nest, without walls, without doors, only those who remained. Click, frame." The photo remained. On its back, in neat childish handwriting, family, without frames, only the truth. Life went on. Camilla lived with Lucia, with Martin, but more often with all of them. Not because it was a routine, but because it was love. Clara didn't leave, and Martin didn't ask for more. Her presence was a quiet anchor, not an obligation, but a choice. "Do you know what I was afraid of after the accident?" he asked once. "What?" "That I would never be needed again." Clara looked at him. "You are needed, because you built a place to return to. You made a nest out of the rubble." He nodded. "But you taught me not to be afraid that it would collapse again." She squeezed his hand tightly, equally. "Then promise, if there is a storm, we will wait for it out together." He looked out the window. Camilla was hanging a new bird feeder, and he said quietly, "I promise." The photograph now hung on the office wall. In the chair, Martin. On his knees, Camilla. On the sides, Clara and Lucia. Caption, family, no frames, only the truth.